You're here joining us during your family time. We're happy to have you here. So, and for our presenters giving up some of that free time too to do this webinar. So thank you. All right, it's 6 o'clock on the dot, and we're going to be really prompt because we value everyone's time. I want to officially welcome everyone and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Ideas for Equitable and Accessible Teaching in Health and Physical Education. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. So this webinar is being recorded and you will receive a link to the recording in the next few days, along with instructions for how you can get your certificate of completion to receive Shape America contact hours. I want to encourage everyone to continue to use that chat function to talk amongst each other. But if you do have specific questions related to the presentation and for the presenters, please use the Q&A function. We're not going to be able to monitor the chat as closely, so be sure to use that Q&A function to answer your questions. And we'll do a combination of asking throughout the presentation and then asking questions at the end. And just so that you are aware, since this is a webinar, you will not be able to turn your video on, and the mute and unmute function is not available, has been disabled. So you can only see the panelists. So I'd like to introduce today's presenters. We have Christine Gilliard Arthur. She's a health and physical educator from Prince George's County Public Schools in Maryland. We have James P. Barton. He's a physical education teacher from Milwaukee Public Schools. We have Marie Rose Benak. She's a manager for health and physical education in District of Columbia Public Schools. And we have Miriam Kenyon, manager of health and physical education, also from the District of Columbia Public Schools. So I am going to go ahead and kick it off to Christine. She's going to get us started, and I'll stop sharing my screen. All right.
I'm here. Here we go. All right. Hello, Shape America. I am Christine Gilliard Arthur. I am a National Board Certified Health and Physical Education teacher. I am also the founding health and PE teacher at the International High School at Langley Park. We are in Prince George County Public Schools in Maryland. A little bit about the school that I service. We were opened in August of 2015, and we had our first graduating class in 2019. We are currently located in Bladensburg, Maryland, so don't let the Langley Park, Maryland fool you. Eventually we'll get there. We are 100% English language learners, so we service 100% recently arrived immigrants and refugee students. They are 85% or more of Hispanic students. Our second largest population are Syrian refugees. 95% of my school population identify as low income. And just a little more context of the community that I serve, Langley Park is a 0.8 of a square mile in Prince George County. It's less than 3 miles from Washington, D.C., and it is the hardest hit jurisdiction with COVID, the most positive cases in the state of Maryland. And so we're here to talk about equity and accessibility. And we're going to be sharing some tips and what's working for us, and just some helpful things that will help you with addressing equity and accessibility. I'm very fortunate to work in the Prince George County Public Schools, where we are looking at ways that we can be more equitable, how we can include more and more students, in which ways we can be accessible. In 2015, we were already a 1-to-1 ratio of Chromebook to student. However, we know that just having a Chromebook does not mean that you have accessibility in a 100% virtual environment. So bridging that, we've been able to give out hotspots. Students been able to qualify for the 1 million project offered by Sprint. we've also, as a school, we have purchased my PE packs. So Gopher does these PE packs, and we do a personal fitness bag that we purchase for every single student that was enrolled in physical education. So either personal fitness for 9th graders or lifetime fitness for 11th and 12th graders. Another way that we bridge the equity and accessibility is really partnering with our community, and CASA de Maryland is a huge partner for us with school programming, meals, University of Maryland doing tutoring programs with us and helping us just to get the information to the students that we need to get to. So this is one, several of the ways that we are overcoming barriers. So what's working for Ms. Gilliard in her classroom and her schools? Choice. Choice is the biggest thing that works for me and my students, where it addresses different components of fitness for them, and just giving them whether constraints of space, what equipment that they have outside of their personal fitness bags, keeping the agenda short and simple. Step 1, step 2, a little couple of diagrams that I put on my screen. Communication. By all means necessary. How can I communicate with my kids? Okay, if they have Twitter, they have Facebook, they have Instagram, they are how I reach them. My Instagram stories put their exercise, whatever the school activity is, just communicating, blasting. Remind is a huge that I use outside of Gmail. So really communication. And the last piece of what's working for me is just being flexible, understanding where kids are coming from, and you might not know the whole story. So just be that Gumby and be as flexible as you possibly can. And just remember that you're showing your heart with them. Just continue to love and care. And you can have those conversations with kids and get to know them on different levels, so that you can understand what their greatest needs are. And a piece of information that I'm going to leave with you today, if anything, your virtual environment should not look like anything of a traditional setting. So keep it simple and sweet for your kids. Just kiss. Just keep it simple and sweet for them. That's my daughter laughing at me. Your students will learn a lot and gain a lot from just erring on the understanding that you know, and you know how to adjust your instruction to meet their needs at this time. Thank you for letting me share what's working in Prince George County Public Schools at International High School at Langley Park.
Thank you, Christine. We're going to go ahead and hand it to James.
All right, hello everybody. I'm going to share my screen here and started. Okay, you all see that, everybody? Yes. All right, this is a virtual beginner learning a new way to teach PE. My name is James Barton, the physical education teacher at K8 Italian Immersion School in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Thanks for coming, and it's nice to meet everybody. I've been lucky enough to be Victory's physical education teacher for the last 21 years. We are a very diverse school, again, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Oops. Friday, March 13th, 2020 was my last day as a in-person PE teacher after 24 years. On that day, we had a meeting in the gym after school. It was on the last day of my in-person. And I kind of look at it as a life-changing moment, like the Challenger exploding or 9/11 moment that I'll always remember for the rest of my life. I had just taught my last in-person PE class for a while. It was a volleyball lesson. And I remember telling the students on the way out the door to make sure they wash their hands. Monday, March 16th, 2020 was my first day as a virtual PE teacher, and I am a virtual beginner. We thought we'd be out for about 2 weeks, and obviously that was way off. We are still out, and we have no, at least here in Milwaukee Public Schools, we don't know when we're going back in person. There were so many questions, and nobody knew the answers to them, and still, that's kind of the way it still is. I got a message from a fellow PE teacher saying, are you ready for online PE? I wasn't, and I didn't know where to start. So you start here. I had so many questions, and I like quotes, and this one sums it up. What feels like the end is often the beginning. Looking back, here's how I started. Here's the presentation focus points. First of all, you got to know your platform. There's Google Classroom, Seesaw, and Class Dojo, and obviously there's some others. You want to explore your resources, YouTube, Twitter, Google, lots and lots of planning. I think that's the key. Existing links versus creating your own links, and Google Meets and Zoom. It took several days for me to learn the platforms, and I did have some time because we weren't having classes for about 2 weeks after initially being sent home. So it took me some time to learn Google Classroom. And you need to surf the internet to teach on the internet, and that's kind of what I did. I learned a lot about YouTube and Twitter and Google. And again, the key to success is planning. Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. And I also worked really hard on links, learning links, doing a lot of YouTube searching. And at that point, I learned that it's really easy to create your own links and create your own videos. And I also learned how to set up Google Meets and Zoom. Well, I don't really use Zoom, but Google Meets here for Milwaukee Public. So you got to really know your platform. Take the time to learn the basics and beyond of the platform your school district will utilize for virtual learning. Limit the amount of platforms you use. And MPS uses Seesaw for kindergarten through 3rd grade and Google Classrooms for 4th through 8th grade. I'm still learning a lot about all these platforms, and I learn really something every day. I really enjoy Seesaw. I don't know if you've ever used Seesaw before, but if you haven't, it's definitely worth checking out. And I'm going to be using Seesaw probably when we return back to normal as well, because I think it's a really great platform to reach kids. I like Google Classroom really for assessments. I use Google Forms, and I used to use Plickers, and I think I'm going to change probably to Google Assessments or Google Forms. And don't use too many platforms. At least I think it's a bad idea. If you use too many platforms, you kind of get lost. I do know of a specialist here in MPS who has 3 different schools, and it has 40 Google Classrooms. So that's a lot to manage. You definitely want to explore your resources. YouTube has so many outstanding ideas by amazing PE teachers and fitness instructors. And if any of you are out there right now, again, thank you so much for putting the time and effort to make your channels, because I've learned a whole bunch. Obviously, you have to, I really think you should explore social media. Most YouTube channel creators have Twitter and Facebook and Instagram pages. Follow them and get great ideas daily. And obviously Google, if you don't know, just ask. Moving on. Planning, and I really think planning is the key to all this, at least it is for me. Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. I know I said that before, but it's kind of how I go about my business. You create a format, have a plan for a quarter, a semester, or even a year, and plan for virtual, which we are currently here in MPS. I need to start planning for hybrid, which I think is going to probably be the hardest of the levels that we reach, and obviously in person and social distance. So right now I'm doing a lot of virtual work, but I still have a lot of work ahead of me as far as hybrid and in-person learning. If you kind of look at this, my format that I kind of put out here, I have, and this is just page 1. I've kind of broke it down into, I have an ASAP or a fitness lesson, um, and an activity, a home chat, an activity that they can do at home with limited equipment, and some type of wellness lesson. I also have an exit ticket for the students to do. And what the exit ticket is, it's just a 5-question quiz on the videos that I put out. Now, when I put out the videos, I put them out on my YouTube channel, and I also put them on my Google Drive and into Google Classroom, where students can have pretty easy access to them. So I usually give students 3 videos a week. That is at all levels, 3rd through 8th, and kindergarten through 2nd grade. And I kind of broke it down into those levels. And moving on, but planning is a really important thing that I've done a lot of lately, and it kind of eases the stress and anxiety, a little bit of knowing what I'm going to do and getting that done ahead of time. So next is, again, existing links versus creating your own links. I know when I first found out we were doing online learning, again, I spent a lot of time online and putting together ideas with links that I can send out to the kids. And while I was doing that, I discovered that, I really probably could create my own videos. So what I did was I use a Mac and I use an iPhone. I got myself a tripod and a attachment where you can attach your iPhone to it. And I also purchased a Rode wireless microphone and a wireless, it's a wireless microphone. And I found that that really makes a world of difference. And you more or less tape and you put it on iMovie, and then you upload it to YouTube. You can upload it to your Google Drive, and you present those videos to the students. So I've done a lot of filming. It's like Netflix over here, at least at my school. So I'm doing lots of different videos every day. Next. Google Meets and Zoom. Know your Google Meet and Zoom platforms. I had to figure out, I had never really used Zoom to present before, so I sat down and I practiced and just to get familiar with it. Obviously, the Google Meets, I'm getting pretty good at after about 8 weeks of online learning. And obviously know your extensions, your attendance extension and your grid view extension for Google Classroom. And for anybody who's been using Google Classroom, I know they've had some trouble with attendance, but I finally settled on one that works. And the most important button in virtual learning is the mute button, which I use often because students need to mute themselves sometime or don't want to mute themselves. So I usually help them with that. And obviously have a plan. Virtual, this is what you can see here is the virtual meeting planning that I have. This is for kindergarten through 1st grade, who I see once a week for 15 minutes. So it's not a very long period of time. But in that time, what I do is I have a greeting where I come in and I greet them by name. We do some type of sharing, and that sharing is a video of me in the gym, so that they're looking at me and a place that they're familiar with, doing an activity that they're kind of familiar with. And I also do an activity or a challenge where the students see me doing the challenge, because this is asynchronous learning. So I'm not just sending out links, they're seeing me in person. And then we usually end with some type of message. And usually the theme has been exercise every day for my kindergarten through 2nd grade. And for my 3rd through 8th graders, it's exercise every day your way, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. So I keep with that theme throughout the year just to make it simple. The silver lining in all of this is what I've learned. I've learned Google Classroom and Seesaw. I used it. I'll use it when I return to normal teaching. And I did use Google Classroom a little bit beforehand, but now I'm getting to be a pro. Assessments, again, I'll be using Google Forms. They work great. iMovie, I used to be a little afraid of iMovie, but now I can edit my own movies. It's actually very simple. And YouTube, I can create and upload videos, and I can customize my YouTube channel. And by the way, my YouTube channel is VPEO, that's Vipeo. So if you want to go and check out my YouTube channel, you can do that. All the lessons I've had in there are up there. It's 8 weeks of lessons so far. And I've also learned so many activities that I can use in the gym and when I teach in the classroom. Just PS, snow and cold days are a thing of the past. So kids won't be able to say that they have taken a day off, since we now are professionals at virtual learning. Thank you. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, James. I'm going to hand it over to Marie Rose and Miriam.
Hi, everyone. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Just want to make sure everybody can see the screen. Is that right? Yes, awesome. All right, well, welcome. This is our presentation on how the District of Columbia Public Schools responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. It's what we did to make physical education equitable and accessible in our district. I'm Miriam Kenyon. I'm the Director of Health and Physical Education, and I'm joined here with Dr. Marie Rose Benak, who is the manager at DC Public Schools. Like James shared, I think we were all kind of hit with this COVID. No one was really prepared. And I would just say that in the central office, we kind of had a little bit of a hint that we were going to be closed down in like probably 2 weeks. Everybody was canceling sort of large planned events like our archery tournament and things like that. It started to build up. And we were tasked in the central office with creating distance learning plans for kids, packets that kids could do from home. And so we went to work in creating these distance learning plans for kids because, you know, at that point, our kids we did not have our tech set up. Kids did not have access to technology at home. We have about 85% of our students receive free and reduced lunch. So yeah, we just were nowhere near prepared for the pandemic. And I guess also the distance learning plans were sort of a short-term solution in that we thought we would be closed for maybe about 3 weeks. And when we developed these, our goal was to ensure that all of our students have the opportunity to learn valuable health and movement skills. We want them to spend time outdoors. And so I think, you know, we were thinking, you know, we don't want to have kids doing PE in front of the computer and all that screen time. And we wanted them to get outdoors and things like that. But at the same time, we wanted to make sure that everyone stayed safe, including our teachers primarily. So we didn't want to provide any type of instruction or any type of setup where, you know, we were putting people at risk. And so at the beginning, it was creating these distance learning plans. So the distance learning plans we created for 2 weeks at a time, and they were pretty much tasks aligned to standards. They had essential questions and a rationale, and it kind of went over some steps that they could do at home. They could sort of Google, I guess, information, and they would create a task. And the task, maybe a performance task, like put together a dance and video and submit it. And we had to limit sort of the scope of standards that we use because we recognize that students didn't necessarily have access to space for certain things or equipment at their home. So we did get kind of creative. I think we went through like every sort of fitness, dance, you know, type. We did some yoga, some SEL, all kinds of tasks like that, where kids, you know, thought about these things and then created some type of product for PE. And what we found from that, and this is a picture of an actual student doing one of the sort of the emotional matching that and some words that we did for one of our distance learning plans. was that we didn't really know how many kids were getting these plans. You know, if the parents were able to access it. They were also pretty dependent on the parents' participation. Some of it needed a decent amount of parental assistance. And we didn't really get a lot of like new skill acquisition, as well as that social opportunity that a lot of physical education helps to promote and support. However, we did get quite a bit of information to kids and theme around hygiene and disease prevention. So that was sort of like, oh, this is great opportunity to talk about disease prevention when we're in the middle of a pandemic. So that was one sort of the reflection of the initial rollout. And the rollout, you know, it was fine. It worked, but obviously it ended at the end of the year instead of after 3 weeks. And so we went into the new year to really planning for hybrid learning, except for sort of in the middle of that planning, we changed and pivoted to virtual only. But the great thing about that is with that pivot, we were able to develop the virtual only sort of platform for all teachers to use. And we have sort of the idea of how it will transition to hybrid. So in developing this, we thought about how teachers can continue to use that when they go back in person and are able to sort of have that in-person instruction and then combine that with the online asynchronous content. But right now, the virtual content is a combination of asynchronous, like James was mentioning, either videos that are developed, and then the live instruction, which is in front of the screen for teachers to, and we use Teams instead of Zoom, so it's just a different platform, but that's our live synchronous instruction right now. So in that, here's an example of a landing page for one of our adapted PE teachers, and the students in adapted PE go to their teacher's course, and then they click on their PE, and then they get to this landing page, and this is what we provided for every teacher in the district to have. So they can have a page and a course for all their students to access, all in one place. It has the quizzes, the rubrics, the syllabus, everything that you would need in your course. And over the summer, we developed all of that, all of the sort of resources, and loaded all of our curriculum, all of our scope and sequence, everything into this one place that teachers can sort of pull in and pull out. So all the resources there are there for them. The standards are available, the standard is aligned, it's available for them. And so however they're, teaching, they have that content accessible, and they can just make it published for the students, as well as they can have that live instruction in front of the camera if when they choose to, or when it's scheduled. So this is all now organized in one place. Teams is what we use, like instead of Zoom. They can do play pause it, they can make these recordings and put it up there, or put videos up there. They have their resources. And then there's like assessment tools as well, and also translation tools. So those are all there in one place. And now I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Benak to talk about how we sort of helped our teachers to get to the difference between teaching in person and then going straight to virtual.
Thank you, Miriam. we, back to what Miriam was sharing, we over the summer worked on building this Canvas course companion. This is a new platform for all of our elementary school teachers. So this is not technically what we were used to doing. So Canvas Course Companion is a ready to use student facing course, and it's aligned to our curriculum. And as Mira mentioned, ours was aligned to our scope and sequence and also using those standards. So when the student logs on, this is what they will see, right? They log on to their homeroom course, they see all the various courses and also their enrichment classes. So they will just click on which course they're going to, and it takes them directly to where they need to be. Next slide, Miriam.
Trying to.
Okay. So Miriam talked to you about a landing page. So this is also what the students will see. Once they select health and physical education, it takes them to that teacher's landing page, and the teacher can customize their page however they choose to. But then, once they select that let's get started, it takes them to whatever assignment the teacher has assigned for them to do. It's already right there ready for them to begin their lesson. So to prepare our teachers, of course, we knew that, we can do all the planning that we want in central office, but nothing could possibly be done without our great teachers. So we had to work on getting our teachers prepared to do this work. First, to do the work over the summer, we selected some teachers that we trusted to prepare and start creating content. So what we created overviews that the teachers, once they came back to school, would be able to use to create their lessons. So this is kind of what our agenda looked like when we provided our professional development. So I'll go over step by step. So basics, right? For some of our teachers, this was new. How to log on to Canvas course campaign, how to log on to our DC instructor. So starting with the basics, because we didn't want them on day one when you should be live with your students trying to figure out how to actually log yourself on. So believe it or not, we one-on-one courses on just how to log on, making sure that we're all on the same page and that it's not a surprise when it's time for you to actually teach your lessons and you find out that you don't even have access to them. Now, we, back to what I was telling you about what was created over the summer. So the teachers that we selected created overviews for teachers, and that's what we call modules. They created overviews that the teachers will be able to use to help them create their actual lessons. So modules, when the teacher logs on, they go back and they see all of the content that they would need to prepare to teach their courses. So this is just a sample of what our K through 2 module looks like. For K through 2, we created 5 overviews, and then for 3 through 5, we created 6 overviews using the scope and sequence. And of course, for our high school, they have their courses as well, but overviews were created for them as well. Different courses, various courses were created for them as well. But within each of our overviews, you will see that we have the course scope and sequence, and then also what the lesson overview would be, accompanied by a health unit overview, and then also some hybrid considerations like how to, what to do if you're at home or how to social distance. As Miriam mentioned, when we created this plan, we thought we were going back using a hybrid model. And then we found out that we would be totally virtual. But we did create this content for teachers to have and use. This is a sample, an example of what one of our overviews looks like. This is our fitness one. So each overview that was created with the intent that the teacher could possibly create 5 to 6 lessons. Every lesson starts with an instant activity and ended with some form of assessment. So what the teacher would do was build out their actual lessons using what was already provided for them, or just using some of what we provided for them, and also incorporating some additional resources if they wanted. But what you don't see is the fact that we have essential questions added on. We have what standards will be addressed also added on, and then also additional vocabulary, terminology that the students will learn in this unit, and then also additional resources for them. So the next part in terms of getting our teachers ready, we had to teach them, okay, how do they use the content that's been provided for them to build out their lesson? So that, basically how to edit the content, how to create their own, I guess, I wouldn't say courses, but just how to build out what it is specifically they want their students to learn based on what was provided for them. So yeah. Also, we wanted to make sure that they knew how to basically, how would they assess their students? How would they do their live synchronous lessons? Like James mentioned earlier, we didn't want them using a lot of various platforms. Some of the feedback that we received from parents and other teachers, the complaint of not knowing where to go. Okay, you're on Zoom today, tomorrow you're using Google. So as a district, we decided to just use Teams. So from Canvas, they can actually create their Teams meeting and link that to their Canvas page. So we had to teach, our teachers, how to do that, how to link, how would the students find you, how to link that to your page, how can you assess your students, whether it's using Flipgrid or different tools like that. So, just teaching them step by step how they're going to prepare to do this. And then making sure that they're publishing their course. So what is provided for our teachers is basically it's kind of like their back office, right? The students don't have access to what they can see. So the teacher works in their back office, and then once the teacher has created the content that they're ready to share with the students, then they will publish, that content, and that's what we call a student view for the student to see. Because we have files, we don't want them to access all those files that we might have back there. So you edit what you need them to see, and then you publish it so that the students can see the content in the back. And now I'm going to shoot it back to Miriam to talk about in-person PE.
All right. I just want to make sure I'm unmuted because I thought I was muted that whole time, but I guess I wasn't. Right. So one of the things is like, now we prepare the students, they're getting into their group, the teachers, and they're getting into the groove of virtual learning. But what we found is that there's a lot of virtual fatigue. It is really hard. So we're planning on in-person PE and moving it outdoors. So we're right in the middle of that planning. And our goal is November, I think, 8th to have one class per grade in all of our elementary schools return, and then classrooms that will have virtual, but they'll be in person. So they'll have a virtual teacher and they'll have somebody supervising them. They're called care classrooms. So they'll still be doing virtual learning, but those students will also receive in-person PE outdoors, because we really think that we're able to do this safely with all of the social distancing protocols, mask and equipment cleaning protocols that we have in place, and that the benefits are going to be great for kids because they haven't really had a chance to be outside in a safe place. In many places in DC, it's not safe for them to go outside and play, whether it's traffic or whether it's the playgrounds are not a safe place, or it's getting dark early now. So there's a lot of reasons why kids aren't able to be outside at this time. And PE provides that for them. So we have a plan to create boundaries for the classrooms outside. We know that recess may occur as well at the same time. So boundaries for recess, we don't want to intermix the pods. We're saying practice your routines and procedures for outside and make sure that you align them as you would in the gymnasium or the classroom. So make sure that the boundaries are like your walls, and that you work within that. You set up hula hoops to ensure that students are spaced when you're providing instruction, and that you make sure that you pair or have small group practice, and that there's plenty of equipment so that kids aren't sharing equipment as they practice. Each kid has their own equipment. And it is okay for them, for example, to share like a tennis ball if you're working on striking using a tennis ball. And then we want to make sure that there's some selection for equipment, but ensure that they keep that same equipment. So, for example, if you're, again, working on striking, you have different size rackets. You want to make sure that students can have some choice, but they don't like, oh, choose this and then drop it and then get another one. So just making sure that you're providing enough equipment, but also some choice within that. And then sort of separating out your equipment so that you have some equipment there that is hasn't been, is still clean, and sort of separating out your contaminated equipment essentially, even though. And then make sure that you walk the space to make sure that there's nothing on your space outdoors that is unsafe as well. Because a lot of times you'll walk the gymnasium and you'll see something right there, but there's holes in the playground, or there may be glass or something like that. Make sure that your area is safe for kids to practice and play. And then also be prepared for the natural distractions of outdoors. So there are planes or sirens or things like that. So kids might not be able to hear you if you're calling them in. We try to limit the use of a whistle in our PE classes as a signal. We usually try to have some type of hand signal, as well as a vocal signal to gather them for instruction or to come back in. So hand signals are really good to make sure that students have, so that they can look up and see every once in a while you're teaching, oh, am I supposed to go back in? Because sometimes your voice doesn't carry that well outside. And if it doesn't carry that well outside, see if your school can provide you with a microphone type of system that can go outside. Also, if you have like lesson plans or chart paper or things like this, make sure that they have some type of covering or laminate them so that they can be reused. Because again, taking you know, lesson plans and things like that outside, it's difficult. If a little bit of rain comes, it's going to just mess up your day. So those are the things that we're working on, and just preparing for teachers to go back in person, but outside. And then Dr. Benak is going to share how we plan to train our teachers for that.
Right. Thank you, Miriam. So of course we know that, the one size fits all model never works. So we had to make sure that we differentiated for our low tech and our tech savvy educators. But to piggyback on what Miriam was saying in terms of preparing to go and teach outdoors, so we're going to have a professional development, which will be in person. We're calling that our COVID guidance, going over that. So they'll get to practice and see it demonstrated on how to set up their classroom, a socially distanced classroom, how to set up space for instruction, and then move into your practice space area, making sure that you have a sanitizing station to make sure the students are sanitizing before they enter the space. So, we're gonna, go through all this just to make sure that our teachers, feel confident and feel safe in, using these measures. But of course, people want to see it demonstrated. So we're gonna go over that with them and make sure that they're comfortable with doing that. Also, we have a monthly meeting every third Wednesday of the month. We meet virtually with all of our teachers. And it's about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And what we like to do is at the end of our meetings, we like to poll our teachers to kind of see or gauge where they are and what their needs are. For instance, our meeting tomorrow, there'll be, they have options, so they have to select one option, but from 4, how to use Flipgrid on Canvas to assess your students, how to use PlayPosit. We're also offering a sexual health session, and then also a session with, answering questions, tech, supporting with tech and things like that. So that is every third Wednesday in the month. And then also, we also have courses online, self-paced courses for them to, that they can always, at whatever time that they would like to go and study and be more confident on how to use Canvas, how to use PlayPosit, basically how to, do everything that we're asking them to do. They're able to also continue to learn at their own pace, on their own time. And then, of course, you have the issue of new teachers, right? We have teachers that have just entered the system, and what are we going to do? I can just imagine when I was a new teacher already feeling nervous, and now you're coming back, you're starting your career and trying to figure out how to do this virtually. So we've set aside some time for them where we're meeting with them one-on-one, and just making sure that they're virtually, of course, that they're comfortable and they're able to ask all questions, and we're able to support them as well, and just helping them figure out and navigate this new way of doing things. So in conclusion, we know that, this is what we've been dealt with, and we're all just making the best of it, right? One day at a time.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us for today's webinar, Ideas for Equitable and Accessible Teaching in Health and Physical Education. And an extra big thank you to Christine, James, Marie Rose, and Miriam. So for our attendees, be on the lookout for the recording of today's webinar, along with instructions to download your certificate for Shape America contact hours. I do have a couple questions I'm just realizing that came in. Someone wanted to know, have you all had PE outdoors already?
No. Not at
Okay.
all.
So those are the plans in place that you all, okay,
We're planning for November 8th.
got it. And someone is asking, will the school provide staff or for transport of equipment and sanitation?
We're providing the sanitation for equipment. So we're looking into this, it's called Force of Nature, but it's a pretty cool thing where you like a little tablet and you mix it in and some electricity and it makes it like, it's very safe to use. So it has like vinegar and salt type of mixture, but it apparently is as strong as bleach on as far as killing the stuff, and it's approved for by the CDC as one of the things to use on equipment. So that's what we're purchasing for all PE teachers to have to clean the equipment with.
Someone asked, can you speak more on assessment for K through 5 kids? Oh, sorry, Marie Rose. Did you have another add to that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to add to what Miriam was saying, that also making sure that when they built out their schedules, that they allowed also time for teachers to be able to sanitize equipment. So that's also important, making sure that there's time for them to do that before they transition into their next class. So that was another important part that was added.
Someone is asking more, can you speak more on assessment for grades K through 5 for students that are seen once a week through live Zoom? So does anybody have anything on what they're doing with assessment for seeing students once a week?
Well, I see mine once a week for 15 minutes. And again, we use the Seesaw platform for our kindergarten through 3rd grade. And when you can create assignments, post assignments in Seesaw, and the students then can respond to those assignments. They can respond through video, through pictures, through drawings, through notes. So there are lots of different ways that we can communicate with our students via Seesaw and the lessons that were given to them.
So for us, we're encouraging our teachers to do, of course, the synchronous and asynchronous part, but Flipgrid is what we've suggested that our teachers use to assess students. Flipgrid can actually be added onto our Canvas platform. So teachers can assign whatever task or whatever they want their students to do, or watching them skip or things like that. They can actually add that onto their platform. The student will directly go to that Canvas platform and they can record their responses right there versus, getting another cell phone to do it. They can do it right on that platform and record responses or videotape them doing an activity.
Someone else had a question. If there's no other responses, someone asked, I use Seesaw, but not all kids respond. What do you suggest for students that don't complete assignments or they don't respond to the assessment pieces?
I know that I don't really mention the kids that don't respond. I mention the kids that are responding when I do see them in person for synchronous learning. I always try to compliment the ones that are returning the work. And sometimes kids aren't returning the work because they simply don't know how to respond. So I kind of show them how to respond. And that helps for some, but you're not going to get everybody, but you do the best you can and you try to point them in the right direction and hopefully they answer. But there are some kids who won't. I mean, I just got some kids who just got nothing all the way across the board, but it's only a few.
I teach 100% English language learners. So some of the timidness of speaking on camera, I'm very fortunate to work with a great student support office, and we have collaboratively, we have Kid Talk, and we bring up students who show up for class because we're going to celebrate that they got online and showed up for class. Now, what are we going to do to get them to learn? Making those phone calls, getting connected with home. We do open the building up on Mondays and Wednesdays and social distance, but we do provide support for parents who need to teach their children how to learn, or having the child come in so we can navigate, how can they get access? Well, I don't know how to link my hotspot to my Chromebook, and those kind of, we need that parent support or the student support opened on Mondays and Wednesdays, because we're 100% virtual until the end of January.
That's a great suggestion from both of you, especially just kind of really being able to help the parents do it, because you're right, James, that sometimes they're just not doing it because they don't know how. So
Right.
taking
We
that
also-
time to figure out why.
Yeah, so another thing is to think about is when you have a hotspot and you have a Chromebook and it's running so much juice just to have a Zoom, and then you want them to open a Pear Deck to respond, or you want them to open a Seesaw, and then you want them to open their Google Classroom. That's draining that little 15 gig spot, and it's not going to last all of their coursework for the day. So that's something else to think about, how much access they actually have for technology.
Very true. Now, someone did ask about, they're asking specifically to adapted PE, but they're saying about, has anyone worked with adapted PE students while both in school and virtually at the same time? So it sounds like a hybrid model.
No, I do a little bit. I have one student who is visually impaired, and he's lucky enough to have his mom there with him. But his specialist that works with him at school has also recently come into the meetings to help him the best way we possibly can.
And go ahead, Mary, I'm sorry.
So I oversee the adapted PE teachers. And so some of the things that we've done for them is that we purchased a kit for all of the adapted PE kids, and we sent them to their schools to have their parents pick it up. We have those courses, and then again, the teachers meet with the parents. The teachers meet with the parents and the child via video now. And then our plan is to, in person, they will be outside on the playground having adapted PE outside beginning November 8th. And then for those students who aren't in person, if there are any students who are not in person, then they will continue virtual. So we don't really have, like, within a classroom, a plan for kids to be online and some kids to be in person. But they're going to be separate, but the way we've built it out is so that kids can have access to that asynchronous content, and they have the equipment and things like that in order to meet their goals.
So I have another question. We only have a couple minutes left. I'm trying to kind of understand it, but it's saying, did you think also that students have a big impact of limitations of learning because we are in a virtual field of education because of this pandemic? So I'm assuming they're saying like what the impact is on for learning because of the virtual setting, and that gap that's probably increasing. Is that what I imagine what this person is asking? Any comments or things that you're doing to help with that?
Well, I don't know if I should mention it, but my teacher union is strongly advocating for Verizon and Comcast to be a public utility. If this is going to be a part of a free and accessible public education, then internet should be free and accessible for all students. And we need to start advocating for equal access. And it's just not in urban settings, but it's also should be available in those rural areas. Thank you for the word.
No, you're right. And that actually is what someone just said in the chat. Their kind of question, should access must precede opportunity, right? And so I know when we were planning for this webinar, even that's something that I didn't know in your area, Christine, was about how if students live in a residence where the previous occupants had a past due balance on Comcast or their internet provider, they could not get service because that past due balance was attached to the resident, the address, I should say, and not the actual person who's responsible for. So for things like that, I don't know how that would work, you know, if that's doing a GoFundMe, if there's some kind of
It's
funding in
7
that way.
o'clock. Sorry.
No, go ahead, go, please.
No, it was my computer said it's 7 o'clock.
Oh, okay. Oh, so then right on time, right?
No,
So-
but you were saying something about the internet and the residency, the bill, and I just lost my train of thought. It'll come.
All right,
I
we
know-
have some
When
questions.
students live in also very congested or highly populated areas, there are dead spots, you know, and there's a lot of dead spots within DC and our local governments, and kids are blocked because of where they live. And so I think it's this part of this advocacy thing that we should start addressing and get loud and proud about it.
Interesting thoughts about a public utility. All right, we're 7:01. I see there's more questions. I think the best way could be, if you don't mind, panel, email, people can email education@shapeamerica.org, and we can funnel some of these questions. Tweet at Shape America on Twitter. Thank you so much, Christine, Miriam, Marie Rose, and James. Very informative information. The recording will be coming. If there's any resources that our presenters have, we'll be sure to share that with you all on our website and send out information on how to access that, including contact hours. So with that, thank you for joining us and enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye, everybody.
you.